Do you have a minute?
Sure, what can I do for you?
I wanted to find out what I need to know to understand the Canterbury Tales later this week. Is there anything special I need to study about the history of the Middle Ages?
The Middle Ages is also called the medieval period and lasted from 1066 until 1485.
1066 until 1485. Okay, what started the Middle Ages?
There was an Anglo-Saxon English king called Edward the Confessor who died in 1066. Then, there was a fight over who would take the throne. The Duke of Normandy, named William, defeated Harold II at the Battle of Normandy in 1066. He became known as William the Conqueror. To make utterly sure he controlled England, he established the feudal system.
Is the feudal system the one that had serfs and stuff?
Yes, the very bottom of the social class was the serfs. They lived and worked the land that belonged to the nobles or feudal lords. The serfs were actually considered the property of the feudal lords.
You mean like the nobles owned them like slaves?
Yes, I suppose so. The serfs had very little to eat and could not leave or even get married without permission. Most of what they grew from working the land, they gave the feudal lord. Sometimes a serf could earn freedom, but not very often.
I think my history teacher said something about some manga cart or some King John who had to sign some rights about taxes and junk like that.
Well, yes, there was a King John in 1215, but he signed the Magna Carta. It's also called the Great Charter. Its purpose was to lay down 63 rights a good noble lord should recognize. These include rights such as the right to proper justice and fair taxation, which included consent to the taxation.
Hey, wait a minute. We don't get to consent to our taxation.
No, but we also don't have to deal with the Black Death.
The Black Death?
Yes, the Black Death was a plague in 1348 that spread from fleas to humans.
Where did the fleas come from?
Rats.
Rats. Yuck.
There were a lot of rats in crowded areas of England, such as London. The people who were bitten by these fleas became infected, then spread the disease by going to markets and fairs in other towns. The Black Death would wipe up entire villages. It was called the Black Death because the person's tongue would swell and turn black. Today, we call it the bubonic plague. It is still considered the worst epidemic ever.
What happened to the people who survived?
The survivors found out they could make a lot more money for their labor. Therefore, they began to ask for higher wages. Parliament responded by passing a law prohibiting wage hikes. Then, there was a poll tax to pay for the war with France. It was a flat-rate tax on everyone, no matter how poor or wealthy. The peasants had had enough and revolted. They marched against London with farming tools and throwing stones. They were defeated and the leaders executed.
Okay. So what does all this have to do with the Canterbury Tales?
Well, in the Middle Ages the church was very important.
Is that the Catholic Church? Like the one with the Pope and Vatican in Rome?
Yes, the king was considered the Pope's vassal, or servant. One king, Henry II, battled so much with the church that he actually had the archbishop murdered.
Murdered?
Yes, Henry II had Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered. He acted as if he were innocent because he whined at a meeting a famous phrase. "Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest?" Later, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, became a Christian martyr.
Wait. This is where the Canterbury Tales comes in, right?
Yes, but there is more to the medieval period. From the 11th to the 30th centuries the European nations set out on the Crusades.
I've never heard of the Crusades. What were those?
The Crusades were a set of holy wars to retake Jerusalem from the Muslims. English King Richard I led the Third Crusade. He had to end it in a truce to get back to England to save his throne from his brother John.
That sounds like King Richard the Lion-Hearted and King John and the Robin Hood stories.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? But wait, we're almost finished. From 1339 to 1453 England fought the 100 Years' War over French lands. What won the battle for England was the invention of the longbow.
Like a bow and arrow?
Yes, The longbow could shoot up to 200 yards and pierce armor. For a while England dominated France.
What stopped England's control of France?
Joan of Arc led France to defeat England. However, that is not what ended the Middle Ages. From 1455 to 1485 England was torn by a fight between two houses, or noble families. The House of Lancaster had a crest with a red rose, and the House of York had a crest with a white rose.
Oh, let me guess. It was called the War of the Roses.
You are absolutely right. But the medieval period was not all about wars. The two very famous British colleges, Cambridge and Oxford, were also created. The movable printing press was invented in 1450.
That meant that people could get books without having them written out by monks like Beowulf was, right?
Yes, many more people could have books, and many more people began to be able to read and write. Once books began to be printed, English began to become standardized closer to something we could understand better than Old English. Well, it sounds like it's time for you to head to class. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks for explaining all that to me.